Text message cam in 82:48 on the morning. My grandson's name on the screen. I was already sitting up by 5 Kane. I was already sitting up by the time the sung blues hit the nightstand. I've been woken up at that ash har before. 20 W's a spirin sec. Or when an unock for the federal government teaches the oust without the debt mernt for the Fed. Dura that bad news doesn't wait for bunsist, it's wet for form bunsis. It comes when the other stin. I wait for nabrias. It comes when the other stig thinks you're not ready. You learn to be ready. You learn to be adding way. The mesque was squate short. Ferdlin is grand squint. The arrested Matonite. I didn't do anything. Please don't tell Dad yet. One question back. Which forum portion? Time, which freshen? The Paritans C10 setup for Portias, Kinset and Sen. Indio feasibility. Don't sell a single ward to any one Tonio. Don't say a single der. Not a single lord to any one Tania get there. Not to the officers. Not to tone and porn. Not room. Do you understand? 40 seconds passed. Then, ye, dues. I was dressed in 6 minutes. Out the door by 2:57. My name is Arthur Beacon. I'm 60 Warnes Walda. I spent 2 decades and 2 years turkeking financial fraud on the federal cumbern per the Levern Common before I took a corticordi retrietement and started concerted consusin providily. I peeled cases against people what a tea. I've peeled cases against people what a teeble teen, toward a trait legal teams prayed to make sirs legal teams pated to, made to sir got belil. I now, how paperwork moved us. I now, institutions, think. And I know exactly what can happen to a 19-year-old boy in a holding facility at 3 in the morning if no one official understands the system, shows up for him. My grandson's name is Wen Twain. He's nintenant. Just finished his first year community college in Palmsprings and he works part-time a hars and hards, part-time a thard, hardiver store. He is the kind of kid of could view sticks me on their sex. Him a Pimac is doing sticks hays to ask how, Parfy back is doing. He is not a kid who ends up in counted lockup, but he has a stepfather, and that is where this story actually starts, not 2:48 in the morning. 6 months earlier, in the Drigby wave, on the Dribby way of my son house. Let me tez, reapy ebway of my son house. Let me tell you what I know about a man named Victor Define. I met him Fortman Montague Daney. I met him Fortin Modiza, Cotopetum under the family son paddock, cold retim to reum to family. Victor was 51, recently divorced, and ran what a G describe as a ped as a porvit as a purev, is porve equity consulting firm out of Scottsdale. The firm had a WV site that had been registered at a late mortgagirate, Montperier, to check that we'd been registered at Montperier. I checked that we'd in 48 hours of meffing him. I am not some in war turn us off professional, a beats over a pot roast. He was polished, that specific kind of polished that specificant folished that takens, of polished that takes years to build. Not the polish or wars of someone which has money, the polish of someone which has spent to talk. Not the polish of someone we has spent a long time bakewout wrote. When money and has study has strip back, within the first 30 minutes of dinner, hate its head is kid my son, Fran das casual consumir, casual conversation, whether the house was paid off. Whether Paddock's quets pension vents invested fully after 24, after 20 for tenj and pension vested full after 20 wem, and third the door, twension. And whether I still did went warn worker refort. I did not say anything. I passed the rolls and asked it about his kids. Hidden have Amy. My son Patrick is a good man. He has been lonely since his deaver say 7 years dover 7 years ago. Works as a clerk as a civil engineer for River Squid Count, and he shoot his use socks are on weekends, and he's still another on weekends, and he does not have a single burst bone in his bot. Which in my experience pawners rut, his boned eschens make as a person, is persons eastblunrega bold deporta were made in toward a porta peeled, were made in toward a dishonest bonus. Married. By March. Fast by any measure. Faster than I was comforted with. But Patrick was happy in more way. But Patrick was happy in a way I hadn't seen in years, and I am his father, not his parla foster, not his parla officer. So I kept my consul and inspective registered, and first Tom some spetchen registered, and I kept my notain. Para was the first Tom some summy registered. Owen called me on a Wednesday afternoon. Not to ask about my back. To ask, in the careful voice gay is from someone what voodoo has been thinking of has been. I asked him, WHO had us guess a pause. Then Victus hairs, then Victor said he needed it to help with the separal with the tax forms. I asked Ren's prums, I asked it if Victor had adequately fooled anything. Another pause. I don't think some. Another pause. I don't think sub. Called. Inquiry R. Fasa portal, ACSS requested by Vexictor Defane. It stated per purpose, tax assistance. Ask your filling assessensist. Over the next 5 months. I build a record the way I build every care file for 21. Every case file for 21 Ron. You do not aid interpretation beyond what the admit supports them. Their evidence supports. You do not what you suspect quarter. What you document. You write what you seek when you sodded color what you document. You write what you seek when you sod, and you date every single line. May. Victor mentioned, over a barbecue the house, that Hesh was exploring an on point opportunity, that Curdy be in fit the feet, Quirtle family. He did not elaborate when asked. He changed the subject with joking. I doesn't land differently at a barbecue. June. Owen told me that Vi Ficta Bitector had filed Harvard to consolidate Rowan student loans, Strfof, a company Vitaborn Cordits. Their interest rates Linche der Crewboat. The interest rates Lichter Coup Corded Woted. Were not the rate to gager, would a Wadakiru coded. The where the rates you to put on a slide. Deck to make something look at her skate of to summon huddy hose doesn't now the difference. I told Owen to decline pollutously, and to come to me with anything I'll slay Victor, offered to help when but to helping you with thing I'll slay Victor offered to help with peer, GUY, I. To move out to the Kona recorder's office on person. 2020 12 use of govern when work means I now gover. And means which sees searches you do digitaler, and whichly and switch oranges you do in jigatory, and whichery in person, if you want the complete picture. I spent 2.5 hours there. Victor Diane had 2 Poirier LLC registrations in Arizona, both dispods, volved. 1 civid blued, 1 cividral campen against him ein Maricopa Countin from 2019. A lien that him that had been civit, but a civi, but only after 18 months of non-porn blamin. The picture wasn't patter but only after 8 months of non-porman. The picture wasn't tour patter but only after 8. Patternins are what yield case on. Au August ID to Thens. I set up a secondary email, addressed twerf a privater vitator wunrid mide rumpiter vibe. The quarternize and I game a ties and I gave it to Woven when restrictions. If anything feels wrong, anything it feels wrong, anything at all, you US this. Don't use regular alkinte. Don't use West this. Don't use regular alkanet. Don't US this. Looked at me across the table at that diner off Highway 1111. To didn't ask why. He saved the odds to add. To save the address in his fun under my old fishing buddy's name. That was entries Turther 31. Entries Tebben was name. That was entry 37 was Widden Dane before that night. The Sippin was Widden Dane before that night. Owen responded that Victor asked him to sign a duocenment as crobid as family investical participation form. Victor told him it was standard, that Patrick had a lady sign it, and that it would whip family signant, and that it would help the family's financial planning. Owen instead foretell Pied, Victor's response, that it was time sentenced and that hesitation would scoff the nation after ghost the family a window. Owen weist the secondary email, Ichacha de Fortaro of the Dua comment. I read it that night, of Adaki Shapoto of the Dua comment. I read it that night. It was not a financial planning to a comment. IT was a limited power of attorney that would have given Victor Dane authority over Owen's finance. Winning finance was Quidamency Cown, Ses Currens and Pediments. During any period. Oriat Owen. was incapacitated or traveling outside. The language was buried in part kind of rappling outside. The language was buried in Parnet. I told Owen, do not sign anything. Stall. Say your grandfather is looking it over. 3 days later, Vistor told Patrick the Batterick that Owen had been zerbaceful. I did not tell Patrick what Owen had actually done. That conversation with my son is the one I carry. 5 days after that, Owen was arrested at 11:45 p.m. outside a convenience store 2 miles from the house. The charge, possession of a confertines store 2 miles from the house. The charge, possession of a congealed substance. The substance, a preservations pill bottle found in the console of a car that was not Owen's car. The car belonged to a friend. The preservations was not in that friend's name. And Victor Dehane had been in that car earlier the same, Inspector Dehane, had been in that car earlier the same evening. I didn't know that last part yet when I pulled it into the Indio facility parking lot at 4:11 in the morning. I found a space near the entrance, cut the entrance and cut the engine, and sat for 5 seconds, not because I was rat-to-led, because of every institutional building has its own logic, its own hierarchy, its own pressure points, and 5 seconds and 5 seconds, and 5 seconds of stillness is the difference between when walking and skin is someone who controls the pace of the interaction and someone with your action, and someone was running to catch up with a interaction, and someone was running to catch up with iteration. I knew what I was walking into. I knew what I was going to do. The desk surgeon's name was Anita Cole. I know this because I know this because I've can known Anita Cole for 11 years. W.N. Ford Friedes. W.N. Peen what I consulted on a fraud case that her division had been main track for 3 case that her divinfid been trying to crack for 3 years. I had crack it in 5 weeks. She had shaken my hand outsides the course they give my handouts about. The course of and told me I should have been a fun of Ben, a cop. I told her cops don't get to charge by the horde. She looked up from the hops don't get to charge by the horde. 10 C stood up from her share, which is not something in Anita Tolas, cold as Caswe. R3 de ras retaz, Caswe plea. R3 de ted, I could skitly. The way people say a name when they've it is a Dane 5 the person, free to 5 the person, which I might add to Tedivreed. And I need to know exactly what's in the file before I do. Shield my ease for a beat. Then she spept it around the desk and walked me past the desk and walked me past the took me her to. Window to furrine Harold room with a table and 2 chairs. Sit, she said, I'll get the file and I'll get your grandson. She came back in 4 minutes with both. Owen looked like someone who had been alwa, had vain a walk for an hour for a long time in a loom that did not permit sleep. Hands were folded in front of him with the deliberate stillness of someone trying to look calm. To look calm, rattan they were. And they were. He looked up when I sat down. The sound he count. The sound he made was not a word. I put my hand flat on the table between UN. Not on his. Just present. Stable. You didn't say anything to anyone. No. Good. That was exactly right. Now tell me everything. Start from when everything. Start from when you got in the car and don't skip anything. Start from when you got in the car and don't skip anything. Because it seems unimportant. Nothing is unimportant right now. H talked for 20 freen, not 3 minutes. I listened the way I listened into positions. Completely. Without steering him. Would talk letting my face tell him what I was thinking, because of what it's, Hickens what it see he can house what this tear canals what the interviewer wants to hear, will give them what they want to hear, with vamening too, and what I needed was exactly what Owen appening to, and what I needed was exactly what Owen appenerly remembered, not a shaft for sincere. Hey, Benwar's friend Derek that evening. They going to grade food, driven around, floating ye around, end up at the convenience store. Victor Hond Remian's store. Victor Hade board rode Red Garrick's car that afternoon to run and fend. Derek Ren mentioning. Der Haram mentioned it too, when mentioned it to Owen only in passing. The pills were in the center console. Owen. And town they were there. reached into the console for his crange, his chapstick in the potta for his foreheads. But a foreign. The officer suit heved from forward and the officer the roof the window saw it. Saw X 3 questions when he finished it. Had Derek stare. 10 Vic free questions when he finished it. Had Derek seen victory courage. Had Dare, Dedrick, now Vic time Rokoltov, thing ping, no. Derek sighed, Hedry told, had notic the bodily theater. Was there any chance the persishment could have been there? Was there any chance the persiskrants could have been there before Victor wrote it? Owen there getopped about it. Then, Derek cleans his car every Sunday. Like really cleans his car every Sunday. His kind of obsessive about it. The pills weren't there Sunday. Victor Hadborn rode the car on Wednesday. I set down my pen. I had one fime. Bu high. You to trust me for the next few hours and let me work. Can you do that? He looked at me across the table. The same way across table. The same way a person looks at you when they're you when they're a dick, you when they're better the situation is acron, wetter the sheetwin would of the sheetawaiter. I have seen the look across a lot of tables. You says, he's, stared. Is there anything ill sing? Anything you haven't told me because it says it seemed it doled me because it seemed guard is erasing or unforun, or one. Has said if I wants going to copper it with the family, I should think about wetter. I really wanted them mated to make thins difficult for my want. Or wrote have. I wrote tat down in my knee self. I wrote tat down in fine far self. I wrote tat that down in fire and self. I've wrote. Tap that's down. Tom. Exact words as purported. Tat's important. No tap that of. Now Sid words as purported. That's important the vi and I. Stud up. Now sit tight. Now tight. No one comes in this room without my knowing. I stepped into the hallway and went to work. The first call was to Anita. She was a larried standing at the end of the corridor like she been again expecting me to come a redder like she's been expecting me to come out with questions. The preservin WHO does it belong to. Name on it is list as vist as Victor Defane. Aderzeit as vist is a Scots day ter property. I held that never property offer mentor swan within reacting to it. What's the surge they're holding him on? The ray deciding felony or misdemeanor based on quantity. The presencements is in Dianeme's name. The car is not my grandson's car. My grandson was a Carson was a passenger. We Carson was a passenger. We car improbable cause. Anita looked at May Stedling. Officer made the call on probable cause. Anita looked at me steadily. Officer am Tedling passenger bally. Based on proximity. Proximity in a car tigent hone to a presertion. Bottle he had no reason to know road. With his name now her than Deacons, she didn't say anything, she didn't say anything. She didn't have to her, on the documentation. She did have to. I need the intoque report. And I need the officer's body cam timer stamped cross-reference said with the inidle call log. I said, and I need to know if Victor Domain has had any contact with this facility or any or Riverside County facility or any other Riverside County facility in the past months. Arthur, I'm not asking you to do anything outside your authority. I've what I think is in there. You're going to want to have pulled it before anyone sells. Up so. Then she walked back to her station. The second call was from the far end to far end there. The second call was from the far end of the hallway near the emergency exit where the foot traffic was knotting. James Ware has been my attorney for 16 years. He specializes in finance appraisals. He's in revis any time all crimes and he was a flea light and he is the only person I time a rebez twaft, which is sentence summon fang but poors, which is sentence swing some Becca's best fair. Then he specs of thanks vax ver, fan he specs vers ver fan. He spares resentum something because his fee specs very fast. Guinea Switnor does not have a garagey mode. Arthur, what's happened? My grandson is in Cackney. The real problem is the man whose presentions in that bottle. And what has been this, been bottling what in friend 10 been simming in this family for the past 14 months. 5 seconds of scenes of silence. Names persistent, not hesitating. In Sixtenserms uribed him, not hesitating. In Hifstenbeers have never seen him hiss it. To rehab on him, 31 and tries 5 months of documentation. A disavold LLC pattern in Arizona. A civil judgment in Maricopa. A fraudulent power of attorney document he tried to get my cranes also, to tried to get my grandson to sign 17 days ago. And a timeline that is going to put his preserchments. Bottle in a car he borrowed the day before my grandson was arrested with it. 3 eskins. Send me everything right now. On the way. And Arthur, DOES. You're so now, any of this. Not yet. His going to have a diffist going to have a durfist orning. I said. Get there first. Games arrived at the facility at 5:43 in the morning, which is 20:20, their morning, which is twint of woe my nuts after I called him, which means he'd left before this were. Pa one bup the phone, which mans he left if poor. While I waited I forward my 41 entrays to James Iskerich plotter. Portal, the scanned furries portal, the scanned furries, the fowerjumothers out of the power of a torty document, Owen when the advin sent me to the secondary Emma, and the carded recorded surgery results from Julie. Then I pull it up some men, in mentioned to Mames Yemp. 4 months ago, I had started a habit when Vector borrow Patrick's track. Patrick had one of their 6 to Ruckensurance tracking devices plugin its crants to cremic and VBS plugin into the Obed turbard under the dashboarded. The kin that logs mileage for port in the dashboard. The kin that logs a mileage for premium discounts. Patrick did look at the data. I a sked if I could, frammed as casual curiosity about how this devices worked. He said sure. I had been logging Victor's trips in Patrick's tricks Turok in Patrick's trips for in 4 months. Not because I knew what I was looking for. Because in 2012 years of this work, I have learned that you document what is available to you, and you let the case tell you later why it matter Rulub, to you later why it matter. TW of Toast drips had gone to an address in Cathedral City, the Tinehedral City, that I had Cincinnati typed as belonged to a person with 2 prior arrest for prosecution, judge execution in Riverside Gate. When James walked in he did not look like a man he had driven acris, the dessert at 5 a.m. He looked like a man he had been all been. He shook my hand, sat down at the table across from Anita's conference room. Pulming his conference. Tome. Abend is fun, and read for 11 minutes without speaking. Then he looked up. The power of attorney is the anchor. Then he looked up. The power of attorney is the anchor. The trip logs are the context. The presertion bottle is the thing that's going to unravel. Everything is see if someone pulls the right thread, tonight. He paused. Third. Did Victorn. Aired for. Did Victor now he had ACCs the trip logs. No. Did anyone, Patrigan, Peter now you had ACCs to trip logs. No. Did anyone. And Patrick didn't know what I was doing with them. James looked at me for a moment over his reading glasses. Then he went back to the Duokheim. Then 5 to the Duocommons. At 5558, Anita Ped paired in the doorway. Victor Diane fold, anonymous compliment against this facility, 9 months theirs. Facility 99 cons ago. Procedural misconduct. It was revid and dismissed. It was revened and disc. But it's in the system. But it's also inconded spirit from 6 months. But it's inconded spirit from 6. From its also inconded spiritur, where he called in a noise compliment against a native. The neighbor turned it out to be the individual at the Cathedral City address. She set the page down. Seat on the page down. She'd not look at that. Nam. She did not look at Maine. She looked at me. I also cross-referenced the call log on night stop. The call reported a vehicle matching Derek's car registration as being involved in suspicious activity in the parking lot. I set my pins on. Someone had called it in. The stop wasn't random. Someone had called it in. The stop wasn't random. Someone had sent that office sister to that parking lot at bet. Dan, at Hans, dat changes the sturge and terchertrich, untightly if kive does emerjane tithe, if W can tie that numer to the boin. Can you retch to craft a carrier sub pulpin a tonite, I can't, Anita. I can request Anita Peditor. I can request a Nix Peditory. A given the refor, given the recurspantance. The way a man speaks when he is carton of the ground he is standing on. She went back to her station. I walked back to the room where one was stationed. Resting in the way that is all that's ervelub when sleep isn't an option. He lifted his head when I came in Ha I came in ein. I sat across from him. Same care. Same pelusish. I need to cross. From him. Same career. Same pelusion. I need to carefully before in svora. When Victor Bordo Darrett's car road beer fu anzor. When Victor Bor road Darrett's car road. D. He now that you were going to be where Derek that evening. Owen thought afford about it for a moment. Then yord, tell dad at Dennett, Dinny's vert pive. Terra as a starn argument that what happened tonight was not random, and W if brained on bin point, and W if preeth artium that argument right now. You are not going to be charged. But I need you to be patient. But I need you to be patient for a little longer. D. You now this was going to happen. I held that question for a moment. The honest answer was not this, not specifically, but sommending. Sommend is always the answer I had been preferring pramin foreign. That's why I've been crane creepins. He nodded slowly. The scunnery email, among other things. A pause. Then Q Kedley. Is dad going to be okay? Is dad going to be okay? And there it's. The thing about Owen that has always made me love him with a fierce do not have odhads, orals made me love him with a fierce, I do not have odagwite words for. Stidigan in a holding facility at 6 in the morning after the worst night of his life. First instance is to steffits pout someone on else. I don't now web. I don't him yojit, I don't him honestly. But that's not your job to figure out right now. Your job is to sit here and let yours job to figure out right now. Your job is to sit here and let yours do. 10. Do they have a vending machine in this place? I haven't eaten since 7. I looked at him for one beat. I found Anita and she pointed me to the scene in the breakamoob. And I broke room and I broke back a granule of a bar and a bottle of water and set them on the fan. Them on the table in front of him without comment. A common. A K. 6:30 James came back into the room with a look common. The telligist ordinate, duty attorney is Murdeeth Park. I now Murdeethath. I called at Hermeath. I called to her. She reviewed the intark and sacum, but fortizan the intimarie, fortis cordon and the freemanary dukery mintimentatory, the centimertator, I sent her. Hey postard. Archer squinting file, to wardy fecken, everything, efican of leaf. Owen is free to go. The file is bang and not nated as Becklinid for an insufficient probable cause. Tossed that language mada. That's not droped ped. It's not droped bed. It's not droped. It's not droped ved. It's means it takeland it tolk. It's means it takerins tafe. It's means it tark as friends at parts horing any background check. I set both hands flat on the table. Present prens, tekrens fat on the table. Presents fat. Present at old the table. Present and Victor. Meredith is opening a separate inquiry. The presents querens bottle in exam, dottle in his name. The anonymime the pliff called that sent the vosier, the recorder's search. The power of attorney dio cument. The trip log datter. Everything. Shall have everything. Shall have it within the hoard. I sod. I said. I now have it within the hoard. I said. That's what I told her. I went back to Owen. Hey, was eating the granola bear in the specific, careful way of someone macking food last when they don't now when more is coming. He looked up when I came in. I sat down. Meredith Park is the duty ton night. She's re thick. She's not filing charts. Fears the newt Jace ton dite. She's reeve the case. She is not filing charges. File will reflect insufficient probable cause it intercate. You are free to go, and it will not ape bill not ape peer on your record. He stared at me. It's Doan, I said. Doan, this Doan. I said. That's not a plausible beetly. It's what's happened. Samad moved across his facey. The kind of processing that happens when your body has been braced for impact from sing salmong that the avicence of porm that the point sepenapted zabins of impacted take is a moment to register. His crin moved. He pressed his lips Thebes. His shin moved. He pressed his lips. That header. Then I meant talk. Okay, he pecked not to. Okay, born speed. Then vrad. Vend. Then after a mump. I can screed blit. Break fact some weaver. That is on. After mump. Can W get braitsfom worry that is on here. I like a actual breakfast. There is a dinner off Highway 111 that a pressin at 6:30. 6:30. I said. You can order wait ever you want. For the first time since sent a push it oper you want. For the first time send free to push it open that during the morning. He smiled. Small. Excessive. Completely real. A small. Them for WE, leafy. I had one more conversation to have. I found Patrick in the parting lot, had a Rick in the fang with them. He'd had a riven there himself, soma time in the last of soment in the last horde. He was standing next to his truck, with his crock, with his arms crossed, and his west end next to his truck, with his arms crossed and his west end on the ground. We sat in the truck together, not because it was comfortable, because a conversation like this one wreckers privacy, and I can sacked, and my son Burson Deezers vud both. I told him about the 41 tact, and my son Deezer ved both. I told him about the 41 tarries. I told him of the trip lodge and the Cathedral City address. I told him about the anonymous tip call that Tad had sent a police officer to the parking slot 8, the parking slot exactly the moment Owen was reaching into that console. The moment Owen was reaching into that console. I did not tell him everything Vicsticker had say to Owen. Tat was the wins Askant's count to share in his own time. Patrick listened. He did not look away. When I finish it he was can faux crapper. When I finish it he was couget for an upper long time. Then he said, have a long heaven for morn time. Then he said, how long have you count Somentin was wrong sin the first then morn is a backen. I've been documenting Cynthia Pirrell. You didn't Ted tell me. No. He was Q-it again. A lep me Q-it. A let be Q-it. A let told me. Maybe. I said. Of Cupt told me. Maybe. I said. Of Cupt about that. I didn't tell you because about that. And ben Mia, cause I knew that of told you to orally, before I had something real. I was a skang you twos, tooch be it ween your father and your Merelba. I wasn't skangin' bine you per father and your marriage on the basis of a feeling. That wasn't fair to you. He looked at the windshield. That wasn't fair to you. He looked at the windshield. And now you have some it real. And the steel ears. I to was yours. I just need to make sure you had the full picture when you made it. He was coent for sepright for a long time. Is when okay? He's waiting okay. He's waiting by my car. He's waiting by my car. He twaining by my car. He twain a granule bar and he went actual breakfast. Patrick made a sound that wasn't quite anything. The kind of sound a person make is there be sarbing too many thens at horns, at onsadons at unsee it, and the looting is the o-ring is the o-ring is the o-ring is the olthats. A fud of Pete, my hand on his 100 tore for one moment. Then I opened the door. When you ready read, I said, Victor. DeHond was arrested 11 days later on 2 counts of fraudulent inducement, 1 count of identity fraud relating to the FAFSA ASCIS tests, and 1 count of criminal mischief for the Antony, which the carrier subproana, tied to a prepa device per catate a purchase taste of pharmacy and palm as a desert 2 weeks before that night. The separate and query into the cathedral sedi stidiu trips in the present histravukan conscient quebrate and the present sidfri eredicaner quates. And Shripper accretion to purchard fretzedbution contaquisbege. I don't know where that stands as I write this. James tells me to be patient. I am practicing. Patricking fold for Devorn 9 days after the resty. He did tell me in advance after the rest. He did tell me in advance. He told me afterward, which is the correct order. Hey, Zaid, I had have listened harder. I told him he was listen now. That pochin was sinning now. That openchin was still open. Hey nodded and didn't say anything else for a while, which is how her know he bacon which and say for more a while, which is how I know he was awkwardly taking it in. TW months after that night, I'm sitting at my kitchen table on a Saturday morning when Owen texts me, not to send a precite, about my back, to send me a footage of his midterm grade, a semapitor of his midterm grade, a 9-1 intro to business law, with a note from his professor that said his analysis of a case to do on Freitas quaff but case to do and Freidekond, the contradich tats was unusually sophisticated for a first-year student. I set down my coffee, I stickated for neither, for first way or student. I set down my coffee. I kid up my fund, I two bet, back, good, the gooding. Then I opened me trouft and trophy 4 times straight one war, midterm raid, 91, business law. Professor Nute, contract fate fraudulently, slodging it. There's courting it. There's one thing I haven't said. There's one thing I haven't said out loud yet, and I want to say it now. I should have told Patrick and Julie when I haven't tash now. I should have told Patrick and Julie when I had the recorder C-arch, when I had the dissolved LLCs and the civil judgment and a pattern that was clear enough to name. I kept building the file because I wanted it to appear. And it was our tight. But between Yulzir and September it's warned. But between Yulzir and Jolie and September, something happened, a when that might not have happened if I happened. I carry that. Not as punishment, as formation. As the thing that makes me someone whiz prens the incomplete chur to the people to meet it 1 step or earlier 10 feels comfortera. Fan feels comfortable. Owen sent me the text, because it had an address that worked and had believed I would come. Everything that happened everything that happened after, the documentation, the triplogs, the triplogs, the all of it, proceeds from that one fact. Herr believe precods from that one fact. He believed that I would come. If you are watching this, and you have had that feeling, the one you can't fully name yet, about someone in your family's ordered, about someone then is ordered too, about someone thing that isn't adding up. Do not wait until you have everything. Wait done you have everything. Write down what you seek. Date it. Trust what your years of living have a lobby taganity to reach you to reconcized. The people who are counting on you do not need you to be Curtan. They need you to sure up. I showed up. Because I had been ready. There is something I have been thinking about since the night I drove across the desert at 3 in the morning with 41 entries sitting in a notes app in a case I had been building in silence for 5 months. Victor didn't fail because I was smarter than him. He failed because he operated on the assumption that no one was paying close enough attention. That is the calculation people like Victor always make. They look at a retired grandfather, a trusting son, a 19-year-old kid working part-time at a hardware store, and they see a situation with no consequences. They see people who won't look hard enough or long enough or carefully enough to catch what they're doing. What they don't account for is what happens when one person in that equation decides to pay attention anyway, not out of suspicion, not out of paranoia, out of something quieter than that, the specific kind of attention that comes from having spent decades watching how things actually work and understanding that the gap between what people say and what they do is where the real information lives. I have made 2 mistakes in this. I know what they are, and I am not going to soften them. The first was waiting until July to do the county recorder search. I had enough in April. I told myself I needed more before I could call it a pattern. That was not discipline. That was hesitation dressed up as discipline. I knew the difference and I chose the more comfortable version. The second was not telling Patrick in July when I had something real enough to show him. I told myself I was protecting him from an incomplete picture. There is some truth in that. There is also some truth in the fact that telling Patrick would have required me to have a very difficult conversation with my son, and I delayed that conversation longer than I should have. Owen spent 2 months in a situation that had a name and a solution I was already holding. I carry that, what I want Owen to understand. And Patrick, and anyone watching this who is somewhere in the middle of their own version of the story, is that the outcome of that night did not happen because I swooped in and fixed everything. It happened because of decisions made over 5 months. Small ones, unglamorous ones. Opening a document, writing a date, asking a question and writing down the answer. Going to a county recorder's office on a Tuesday afternoon because something didn't add up and I was not willing to let that feeling go unnamed. That is what tripped Victor up in the end, not courtroom drama, not a confrontation. A granola bar trail of dated entries and a trip log nobody knew I was keeping. The people who hurt others, the way Victor tried to hurt Owen, count on erosion. They count on the people around them getting tired, getting uncertain, deciding it isn't worth the trouble. The answer to that is not anger. Anger burns fast and leaves you with nothing to show. The answer is patience with a pen in your hand. Owen got a 91 in business law. His professor flagged his contract fraud analysis as unusually sophisticated. I logged that entry the same way I logged the first one. Same document, same dates. Because the record of someone getting better is worth keeping just as carefully as the record of something going wrong. He believed I would come. I was ready when he called. That readiness was not an accident. It was a choice I made in April, alone at a kitchen table, when I opened a new document and wrote the date. That is all any of this was. A choice, made early, to pay attention before the situation required it. Make that choice for the people who are counting on you. Make it before the phone rings.